A lever-action rifle of the future, available over 100 years ago. Often overlooked, but a gun so cool I think it should have its own episode. The Savage Model 99. Hello, gunfighters, and welcome to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about gunfighting and gun-related stuff the right way with God at the center. So I think I'm going to forego the lengthy bio. Try to abbreviate it. First and foremost, I am a Christian. That is number one in my life, serving God, following Jesus. Combat veteran, served in the United States Marine Corps and the Army. Also law enforcement veteran, private contractor, state rifle and pistol champion. Professional big game hunter and guide. If you feel called to support, check out Patreon. There should be a link in the show notes. With that, I am your host, Michael Milito, and I am blessed to serve you today. Now, if I told you I had a lever-action rifle firing pointed Spitzer bullets that didn't have a tube magazine chambered in, let's say, .308, you might think, oh yeah, the Henry Long Ranger that just came out. That's a pretty cool gun. What if I was talking about the Savage Model 99, and not 1999, which would still vastly predate the Henry Long Ranger? What if I was talking about 1899? That's right, 1899. When this gun came out, it was so far ahead of its time, I think it still kind of is ahead of its time. It's a really cool gun. It was based on my brief research, and I got a lot of this from Wikipedia, so, by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses, go back and verify this information before you take it as true, but based on 1892 model and then 1895 model. And it was a vast departure from the lever actions of the time. We think of the lever actions as the 1894 Winchester, which is fantastic. Kind of that classic line, or the, Marlin 336. Or the 1895. This is right there in that time period, but vastly different. If you look at it, it still kind of looks futuristic and antique at the same time, and I don't know how you really get that aesthetic. Very few guns can do that. The Whitney Wolverine, a Colt Python, they come to mind, but there's not many. This one surely does that. Just beautiful wood stock and beautiful, just American steel on this gun. It has a rotary magazine, much like a 1022, although it far predates that. It can fire Spitzer pointed bullets, unlike most lever actions of the time and even today that have a tube magazine. It did not have a tube magazine, which let it fire this new era of rounds, these pointed Spitzer bullets. And a lot of the cartridges from days of yore that this was originally chambered in, I saw the 303 Savage was the original. But way back in the 50s, at which point this gun would have been well over 50 years old. It came out in 308, a modern, what we would consider as like a quintessential American long-range hunting round. Now, it's not as long-range as some of the brand new stuff, but it's certainly not obsolete, the 308. This lever-action rifle came out in 308 in the 50s when the 308 was a new thing. It's a fantastic gun. It reminds me of Ecclesiastes. There's nothing new under the sun. Henry comes out with the Long Ranger, and people are like, oh, this is so cool, a lever-action that can fire Spitzer bullets long range. And the Savage 99 was able to do that long, long ago. That, and it's beautiful. It's a great piece of American history. It had some, let's say, for military trials, it was kind of never in the right place at the right time, I don't think. It was used by whatever they call I believe the Montreal Home Guard for World War I. Apparently, an earlier version of this, an 1892 one, which I guess predates the Savage Company as a whole, was up for Army trials against the Krag-Jorgensen. And obviously, if you're familiar with U.S. military small arms history, you know the Krag-Jorgensen was adopted very briefly and then dropped like it was hot. What a weird alternate history to think that they could have been armed with lever-action rifles that were able to be chambered in a Spitzer-type bullet. I mean, this obviously is able to be chambered in .308 because it was. In fact, let's go over some of the cool, and I won't even mention all of them because some of them are pretty obsolete, but the .303 Savage, the .30-30 Winchester, the .300 Savage, which is a really cool round, which is kind of very similar to a .308 before there was a .308. If you look at it, it was a short-action, fairly modern design. I don't know why it wasn't adopted other than they just wanted to shorten the .30-06 because they were already familiar with it. But a fantastic round, the .300 Savage. The .250 Savage, fantastic deer round, quarter bore. The .22-250, still one of the best varmint rounds of all time. .243, .308, .358 Winchester, that would be a cool gun. A 99 Savage and .358, 7mm 08, and perhaps one of the most well-balanced and underappreciated cartridges, of the 1900s, the .284 Winchester. Fantastic. And if you want a big bore, the Winchester .375. That's a pretty cool round too, the .375 Winchester. And also available in a .410 shotgun. Again, it's a rotary magazine, which the 1022 has kind of proved that those are pretty reliable and awesome magazine systems. There also were detachable box magazine systems, which, if you were going into the era of that, which, remember, we didn't really adopt that until the 1950s. You're talking about a model 1899. But obviously it could be equipped with a detachable box magazine because it later was. You talk about a really cool gun. Let's get into what it's cool and good for. It's a piece of American history. It's a really cool lever action. I mean, although the U.S. military never mass adopted lever actions, I think we kind of, and the world as a whole, probably thinks of lever action rifles as an American thing. Even though, the Russians used the Winchester 1895 and 7.62x54R probably more than we used lever action rifles as a whole. We still kind of think of the lever action rifle as quintessential American, iconic, and we kind of have that image of the, tube-fed Winchester 94 or, Winchester 1873 in our head. And because this looks, I would say, futuristic even by today's standards, perhaps that's why we don't see, John Wayne have one in a side scabbard riding a horse. Because if you pulled it out, you'd be like, what movie am I watching? Is this a space alien movie with John Wayne? But it absolutely is still in that same time period. And it, I think, was so futuristic it wasn't appreciated. But that doesn't make it not a great gun. If you want a really cool piece of American history and you like the aesthetics of this gun, and I'll be honest, I really don't. As much as I think it's a really cool gun, and I had the opportunity to buy one in .308 for pretty decent money, and I passed it up, and it was one of those guns I've thought about over the years that maybe I should have gotten. But I honestly just don't like the way they look. And maybe that's part of the thing that killed it. But I think a lot of people really do like the way that these look. But you talk about a sleek, handy, reasonable rate of fire, hunting, carbine, light, handy rifle with decent range. It's an awesome choice. One of these in .243 or .308. Or if you want to hand load one of the more obscure rounds just because you like the historicity of it. It's a really, really cool rifle. And we might not think of it as a success as far as military goes. However, it was produced, at least per Wikipedia that I'm looking at, from 1899 to 1998. The 1899. The Savage Model 99 produced for 99 years. That's kind of funny. I wonder if they did that on purpose. But produced for 99 years. The Remington Model 700 is not even close to that yet. Also, looking at some of the variants that are really cool. It has a featherweight variant, which I'm very into saving weight. That would be a pretty cool variant. Also, they have a takedown version. That is really cool. Getting into more modern stuff, they have an R, a 99R, which means it was drilled and tapped for scope mounts. Which, as much as I love hunting with iron sights, it would be really cool to have one of these that was drilled and tapped for scope. Because if you're a collector, and I'm not, you certainly could buy any of these and probably drill and tap them for scope mounts. But that's not how they came, and you might destroy the value. If you got one that was already came from the factory like that, then you're not hurting the value by mounting something on there. Anyway, it's a shorter episode, but I thought it was really worth talking about. It is such a cool weapon and a cool rifle that, a lot of people getting into guns, and I think that's great, get in with the Glocks and the AR-15s. That doesn't mean you have to stay there. Maybe you want to branch out, and again, I'm not a gun collector, but if you are, I think these always have been and still are really underappreciated guns. If you told me right now you were going to give me a hunt, take me on a hunt anywhere in North America for any game, you were going to pay for it, but I had to find and get a variant of the Savage Model 99. I'd say, okay, bring it. They really would be great. There are so many different offerings and calibers and everything like that. I really wouldn't feel undergunned with one. And we're talking about today in 2023, and this came out in 1899. And I just thought a rifle that cool deserved its own episode. Maybe this is not for everybody, but hopefully you appreciate it. If you want more, you can, or you want to contact me, you can go to goodshepherdtraining.com. There should be a link in the show notes. Now, a lot of these old classic guns have a metal butt pad and later a plastic butt pad. Not much for recoil absorption, but they got the job done. They stop the stock most of the time from cracking. Well, something you can do if it's your rifle and you plan on using it and hunting with it. Now, if it's a pristine collecting thing, I probably wouldn't do this, but if you plan on going out and hunting with it and it's already been beat up and maybe had some notches carved in the stock, whether it's this or a bolt action or whatever, with a wooden stock, you can take that butt pad off and drill holes in the back of it. You can write your name and contact information and put it back there. That way it might get returned to you if an honest person finds it, or if, for whatever reason, somebody comes across it. Also, you could put supplies back there. Perhaps just one spare round, just in case. We always have a round with the rifle. You could also take a small piece of microcord or coated wire and make a very rudimentary pull-through bore cleaner, maybe with some pre-soaked oil patches. If you fall down and get that bore really dirty or whatever the case might be. Maybe a small surgical scalpel back there in case you find yourself without a knife, or a ferrocerium rod. Really, the list is up to you. But with those old wooden stocks, you might think about drilling a hole to save weight, and if you do that, you might put a little bit of weight back in with some very practical things. Anyway, that's your tactical tip for the day. And your tactical verse of the day. For none of us lives to himself, and no one dies to himself. For if we live to the Lord, and if we die to the Lord. Therefore, whether we live or die, we are the Lord's. What a good perspective to have in life. Another scripture, you are not your own, you were bought with a price. So hopefully we remember that in our walk with God in this world, that we were redeemed by the precious blood of Christ, that we are loved so much that He died for us. And since He died for us to save us, shouldn't we therefore live for Him? A very simple, powerful truth. With that, men, thanks for listening and have a blessed day.